Welcome to another edition of Eye on Sullivan. I am your host, Mike McGuire, joined today, as we are each week, by the chairman, Rob Doherty. Rob, it's raining, it's cold, it's Memorial Day, but it's the Catskills.
And because of that, neither one of our wives are home.
That's correct. They've both gone to Florida,
Yes.
escaped the cold weather, and when they thought they'd be home for Memorial Day weekend, not so fast.
So my wife says that she usually comes home on her birthday, which is June 6th, and she's like, well, that might be up in the air. So I guess that surprise party I'm giving her would be a surprise for myself and 10 of my friends.
Looks like the surprise will be on you. Exactly. Or the party will be in Tampa, one or the other.
Correct.
So the state of politics in the country have now filtered down to Sullivan County.
To small town USA.
It's small town USA. You know, we saw for the last couple of years what got the moniker lawfare.
Yeah.
And we saw them go after Donald Trump, who fortunately is a billionaire and was able to fight it back.
Correct.
It's now touched Sullivan County, and like any disease, it has started in one town primarily.
Correct.
Not in Lumberland, I'll have you know. We got that. Suzanne has got that town locked down.
She is rolling. I mean, but unfortunately, because of Governor Hochul, she has to run for her office 3 years in a row.
I've called her the treadmill supervisor.
Yes.
Because she never stops running.
I mean, she's going to run for her office. I mean, she could literally be in there for 4 years and have to have run for her office every year.
That's correct.
That's
correct.
crazy.
Fortunately, though, smart people in Lumberland keep reelecting her.
Yeah, she's
a short distance.
Right down the hill.
Well, actually, kind of right up the hill.
Okay.
Up and down. It's hill and dale. But right up Proctor Road.
Yeah.
Is a different world.
Oh, you're being kind.
We have got a world that Brezhnev and Khrushchev would be proud of.
Well, I have to tell you, they, it's funny how some people sit there and talk about democracy, but then they do the exact opposite.
Well, it's a mockery of democracy, is what they've got there.
It's out of control, is what it is.
It's truly out of control, and we've got a special guest here today. She may never come back again after seeing this, but we've got Mel Karney is joining us today from the great town of Highland, and I'm happy to have someone here from Highland that's honest.
Huh. That pool's getting smaller and smaller.
And not a client.
Yet. And it's important that this is another person that really didn't need to run for office.
You know, so it's funny, right? So I said that all the time when I had run for office, right?
That was true.
You know what I mean? So I was angry that they had overspent their revenues 4 years in a row, and I was like, this cannot continue.
They were
like
consistent.
They were consistent. And then I went in there and I stopped that, and we turned the fiscal future of the county completely around, 180 degrees.
And we're not going to tolerate that for more than 4 years.
No, they'll get rid of that very shortly.
That's right.
And so it looks like, Mel Karney is in the same situation where, he is a beloved town. She's, her family has had a home there your whole life, I believe.
Yeah, my father was actually in the first graduating class from the big school, Eldred Central.
Wow, look at that.
There you go.
Yes.
There you go. And then you grew up in the city, though, correct?
Yes. Well, he married a city girl.
All right.
I think my grandmother McKechnie ultimately forgave him because she really did like us. But that was a bad move on his part. But I was born and raised in Brooklyn.
Okay.
And so every summer we were up here because my grandparents were in Lumberland.
Okay. I was a summer kid, too. And then I married a local girl. And when I say local, I mean she's been here a little bit longer than, most, we'll say.
Well, just before George became president.
Yeah, it's
Washington.
like 1750. Yeah. And so my children's roots go pretty deep here. And so, and so it's kind of odd when you're an outsider, or perceived to be an outsider, and you're watching stuff go on, and you're like, this we can't have this anymore.
Right.
What we're seeing when Rob, rightfully so, took the reins in the county, we just had a a rash of bad spending ideas. But it's deeper than that in Highland right now. And we talk about that. This is Ion Sullivan, but I want to focus on this town because it seems to be the playbook of certain political orientations that we just weaponize law enforcement against our political rivals. We're going to have Mel weigh in on things because, she's raised her family here. She's got her grandchildren here. She just wants to enjoy herself.
Correct.
And, she's now running for supervisor. And, what's going on there? Well, let's just tease this a little bit. You've got an elected official in the town of Highland who had her computer taken away in February with no charges to this minute has ever been levied against her. You've got her on the front page of the Democrat, the front page of the River Reporter, which to those of us who are east of the light in White Lake, that doesn't seem like a big deal. But trust me, folks, the River Reporter and the Democrat are still how most people west of the Four Corners or the Three Corners in Bethel get their news. And she's front page news. The town has spent $20,000, $30,000 to try to go after her. And we have an elected town official who has basically not been permitted to do her job since February. Well, that's outrageous. We're going to talk more about that.
She hasn't had her computer since February.
Which means she can't do work because some people come to the window and want to know, what's the situation with my taxes. Oh, I can't tell you because I don't have a computer.
So we have a supervisor, and I believe his name is John Pizzolatto.
John Pizzolatto.
Okay, who thinks that the town clerk is his employee.
Correct.
Which is not the case at all.
And it's been explained to him.
Correct. But I don't think that matters. I really don't think that matters.
It doesn't matter. The law doesn't matter at all to Mr. Pizzolatto, apparently, because he has... Look, if you want to take out an elected official, there's a mechanism to do that. And that is to go to Supreme Court and get a court order to remove the person or suspend the person. They're treating her like she's the mailroom clerk.
Correct.
Instead of the town elected clerk. And they have, and by the way, the official position, now this is not, New York City. This is the town of Highland. The town hall is pretty small in Highland.
It's tiny, yeah.
It's tiny. I've been told repeatedly that, oh no, we didn't take her computer away. Oh no, we gave her a computer. No, she has a computer. But yet, when the deputy was going to be off, they told her not to come to work because she can't be in the office without the deputy. And the deputy works for her.
And I get a load of this. I heard, and maybe Mel can confirm this, is that they put cameras in her office.
Put cameras in her office.
And they go to the supervisor's personal devices.
Right.
Right? So this is no longer a government entity.
No.
This has become a personal political witch hunt at this point.
Not only did they put cameras in her office, but they had another elected official sit in her office to watch her. It just happens to be the person that's running against her.
Is this all
We're talking
true,
about
Mel?
political opponents. So let's bring Mel in because she's got a treasure trove of information for us.
The only thing that's not true is she does not have a computer.
She still doesn't have a computer.
She doesn't have a computer. Well, as of, I want to say, a week ago. Because when I was in the town hall, someone called in with a question. And because the deputy was not present, I said, well, what do you do when someone calls trying to get information? And she said, I tell them the computers are down.
Down? Since
February? Because she doesn't have. I don't know what she does the rest of the time.
Well, I spoke to her an hour ago. Okay. She has no computer still.
So who physically took the computer?
The word was the state troopers stayed by the computer until, I don't know if the state troopers handed it over to the town attorney or if the town attorney had it to Bonadio.
Now keep in mind, I've looked this up and there is no state, in the state police blotter, they've been called to the building 3 times and there is no blotter entry. And the state police... If they took the computer, they would have an entry Trust me on this.
So the state police were
No,
asked
they didn't
to take
take it. They were supposed to, because I think the
Secure it?
supervisor was going to stay with the computer until whoever took it was going to take it.
Because the
And-
fox should be watching the hen house.
Right,
Yeah,
and that
yeah.
Sue had asked the state trooper to please not allow that the state trooper would stay with the computer until whoever took it took it.
And so who wound up taking the computer?
So what happens, as I understand it, and I've spoken to senior law enforcement people about this, is the state police were asked by Mr. Pizzolatto to take the computer, and they said, well, what are we taking it for?
No, thank you. I'm sure
we
they
need a
said that.
search warrant. What are the issues? And the only issues that the town could come up with is that she was late getting minutes from meetings produced.
But
So
hold
you're gonna
on.
search a computer looking for stuff that their allegations isn't there.
But now hold on. If I'm not mistaken, Mel, didn't the supervisor want minutes changed a couple of months ago?
He makes a lot of announcements when he's presenting what he's going to do next. And so it's really unclear. The resolution was so befuddled when he first announced it. Then he did not make the resolution available to actually censure the town clerk. And when I went down to the
Well, you're not
town
allowed
hall
to
to
do
get
that.
rules, come on.
Wow.
There is no provision in the town code for the board. It have to be in the board rules.
Correct.
There is none. There is no state law that allows them to do that.
I know that because
We know that.
we know that because Nadia Rice tried to censor me
Several times.
and several times, and she was several times she expressed her dismay that all 6 complaints against me were not founded, but mine were founded against her.
When the then county attorney, who I don't remember who that was,
Good guy.
pointed out to them that they don't have the authority to censure people, the response was, well, we want to get an input from a real attorney.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Well, a real attorney, fake attorney doesn't matter here because the rule is just not prior to the town clerk losing her computer. At a town board meeting, the supervisor announced that they were going to hire on a FOIL clerk. And so I presented that it's against the law to diminish an elected official's job without passing a local law.
Correct.
That is
Thank
a
you
fact.
for your comment.
That is a fact.
Thank you for your comment.
Really?
That is continuously the response. The supervisor's first mistake was when the whole issue with the bonding of equipment so many months ago that was done fraudulently.
Yeah, but you can't. Figuring out what 2/3 of 5 is hard.
And then-
Especially when it's in writing what that number is.
So let's go over that real fast. So from what I understand, there was a bond for equipment, right? And every town does this.
Well, they wanted
okay?
to buy a truck. We'll
They
get
wanted
it
to buy
all
a
out. They
truck.
wanted to buy
The
a
town
truck.
of Highland never did it. They always paid cash
Okay.
for the equipment because if you bond the equipment, then you have to have collision insurance on that equipment. So the cost of the collision insurance over the 5-year term of this bond would buy another truck. So previous administrations had always put away $100,000. That's part of their budget towards equipment.
Like
this is the first.
A capital budget.
This is the
they
first.
have.
So this is the first time the money was actually there, and yet we bonded the equipment anyway and put that money into a bank account. So the legality of that might be questionable. And the explanation was we're going to get so much interest from our New York Class account
No, you're
on
not.
that
No,
deposit
you're not.
that it offsets. And
No, it
so
does not.
my thinking was, so you have just broken the law for a net zero benefit because
Well, I
the
mean, they could talk to
insurance
Nancy
you're
Buck. I
paying.
mean, she knows that backwards and front.
But we're getting into why they don't talk to Nancy Buck.
Right.
So they do this bond, and if I'm not mistaken, from what I understand, 3 out of 5 people voted for the bond. Correct. And it's clearly written that you need a supermajority, and a
Correct.
supermajority of on a board of 5, and this is in every town in Sullivan County. You need 4 votes.
Correct.
And so now they did not obtain the 4 votes, but they moved forward anyway, correct?
Correct. And the bond counsel, this is how conspiracy theorists are born. The bond counsel's from New York City, so has no connection to the town other than, I'm assuming, these dealings. I don't know him personally. No response from an email that was sent to him. No response from a phone call, from multiple phone calls from both myself and my daughter, who is Councilwoman Haas. And so then you go, you sent the letter that says you're required to have 4 people vote. The attached resolution has 3 signatures. Why did you accept it and move it forward? And only because I went across the street to Jeff Bank after they passed this resolution and said, this is not legal. He does not have a supermajority vote. And then he accused me of making a fuss at the bank, and they ended up going to a different bank. And so I guess ultimately that saved Jeff Bank from the heartache of, but then once the time lapsed where we were fighting him on this particular issue, you go, let it ride, because now he does have a supermajority, because when Councilwoman Kidney was elected from the town for the town, she votes with Mr. Pizzolatto all the time. So now you go like, she would give him a supermajority, and he would, if he were forced to pay off the bond, because that was my goal, make the town whole again, pay off the bond, he would seek another bond. And now he would have the supermajority to get it. So it's really just costing the taxpayers, again, legal fees and all. So
and that's
we let that
the person
rest.
that's running for town clerk.
Correct.
And so that's the person that they have made the person that leads the charge against the currently elected, duly elected town clerk, for against whom there have never been charges, but they have created this ghost campaign now where they've taken her computer away. I mean, you talk about, and Mel mentioned it, under the law, you cannot diminish the authority of an elected official without a local law or a referendum. So they've not only diminished it, they've eliminated it, because, let's face it, folks, without a computer in 2025, right, and you're the clerk, I mean, you probably the mechanic in the shop needs a computer, but when you're the town clerk and everything that you do is derived around the filing of information, the protection of information, without a computer, they've completely stripped her of the ability to do her job at all. And folks, you can be a Democrat, you can be a Republican, it doesn't matter.
Can you be an independent? You
can even be an independent, but you can't be a member of the Independence Party because
it does not exist.
It doesn't exist.
Marxy hella.
It does. But this has to scare the heck out of you if you live in the town of Highland, that, you know, we hear words and we hear about, oh, this one's a dictator, that one's a dictator. This one is a dictator because he has single-handedly taken out another elected official, ignoring the law all along the way.
But go ahead.
I was going to say, this is routine, because the element that he uses to get exactly what he wants is character assassination.
Right.
Because if you go through the list of people who served the town honorably for so many years, and suddenly they became evil, they were not law-abiding citizens anymore. They did everything because the MO here is to make people afraid, afraid that they're going to have to hire an attorney, which they can't afford to do. So you go to the character assassination and pray they'll quit. And most people have. And so to Sue Hoffman's credit, she's fighting back.
And when you say, well, to be fair about that, Sue Hoffman could not come in another day to the end of her term, and they'd still have to pay her.
Correct,
okay?
But that's not her mindset.
No,
I mean, she really wants to do her job.
So how many other people in the town of Highland, since John Pizzolatto has been supervisor, have lost their job by this method?
I think there's probably 10, but I can't.
10?
I don't want to say names.
No.
But I think there's probably 10.
10
and
people.
some of them have been there for, well, you know, the old town clerk was 18 years. There, a deputy town clerk who had been there for probably 10 years. 2 of them, 2 deputy clerks gone. The code enforcement office, let's not even go there.
At one point, it was the joke of Sullivan County that they had no code enforcement office. A friend of mine was doing work in the town of Highland, and he says to his partner, I have to go to the town hall to go get a building permit. And the guy said, there's no one there. There's no one, literally, there's no one there. We do not need a building permit. And this is all under John Pizzolatto.
Right. and it's disgraceful. And that came
Well,
up.
actually, that makes sense because he didn't get a building permit.
Well,
or he's got plenty of violations.
No, his violations are gone. That was the miracle of the town of Highland.
Wow.
So
cleansed in the river's beauty.
So BJ, who was the former building inspector in your town, correct?
Right.
Well respected.
Well respected.
Hard.
I mean, she's tough. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
So now she works in the town of Bethel also, and I know her for many, many years, and she is tough. But she's accurate. Okay, so
right.
that's
she makes you follow the law.
That's part of the
Can you
problem.
imagine that? Someone that
Shocking.
makes you follow the law.
And as you know, I'm a big rules guy, and I saw on his old place, the Oasis, there were over 30 violations on that.
37.
37
But now there's
violations.
none.
And so then when he comes into office, she gets fired.
She wasn't fired.
She wasn't-
Fusco relocated her, according to Mr. Pizzolatto.
Okay.
Everyone else says she was fired.
I believe she says she was fired.
She says it was fine.
Yeah.
She says she was fired. So I'm going to go with her.
I would go with her.
After 30 years of marriage, I usually do go with her. Okay, I mean that's how it works. Okay, so she is relocated, for this conversation, and then poof, magic, his 37 violations.
No, it didn't happen that quickly. First, the board in February unanimously voted to have a month-to-month contract with Fusco Engineering while they sought out other code enforcement.
Okay, that's fair.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sure.
it would be fair if it was actually accurate. So then on March 12th, Mr. Pizzolatto signed a 1-year contract with Fusco Engineering.
But that's not what the board said.
That's correct. And then when I foiled that contract and presented it, he said, they didn't give you the right contract. They didn't give me the right contract? No, we have a month-to-month contract. This went back and forth. I don't even know. You might have been included on that conversation because we brought in the Association of Towns, the River Reporter, the Democrat.
No. Who brought them in? John
I
brought
did
them in?
because
You
I
brought them
started
in.
an
Okay.
email to him to say, you have signed a 1-year contract which completely goes against what a unanimous vote of the board had come
He doesn't
to
have the
Including
authority.
him.
2 weeks before.
Yeah, he doesn't have the
so
authority
now
to
he's
do that.
saying that's not correct. And every time I foiled the contract from Fusco, I got the same contract until July 3rd, which if I show you the contract, he obviously had our old town attorney, Mr. Mogul, create this because the format is completely different from Fusco's
I'm not sure he was
contract.
there long enough to create it, but okay.
So hold on. So Mr. Mogul was the attorney,
Correct.
and then he got fired or he
No,
quit?
he resigned.
He resigned.
I think he saw that. I don't really know what the straw was that broke the camel's back, but we've kind of been holding Mr. Pizzolatto to task. And I think once he saw that wasn't going to end, I love this town. And this is heartbreaking to so many people to see the divisions that have been created, the lack of accountability, the inability to follow the law, the rules that apply to some and not to others. This never, you can like people or dislike people.
Well, that doesn't sound like democracy to me.
I guess democracy is in the eye of the beholder. So ultimately,
I
we
guess.
ended up with a month-to-month contract dated July 3rd, and then shortly, it might have even been before that, when I went in to foil all of the violations as they existed for Mr. Pizzolatto's property, the then clerk said, "Oh, it's not coming up because they're closed." I said, "Excuse me? They're closed. All the violations have been closed." And so the code enforcement officer that was present said, "Mr. Fusco himself did that walkthrough." And I said, "I bet he did."
Wow.
So I just want back
Amazing
up here.
what a new contract will do.
So there was 37 violations by a very, very well-respected building inspector.
That had been on the books for 2 years as they were trying to not take them to court, giving them the ability to address the violations and correct them.
Which is reasonable in what we see. As long as you're working in good faith, usually the code enforcement officers will work.
So then that person gets relocated, okay? And then the person who owns the company, who just received a year contract with the township, goes back in, and miraculously, there are no violations.
No permits to do any of the work that was required of which his company also, BJ was their employee. So Fusco ostensibly was behind all of those violations for 2 years. And then suddenly, with no permits and no changes made, the violations are gone.
We need permits?
We don't need no stinking permits.
Come on.
It's the magic sponge.
Wow.
It's
Wiped
the
it away.
magic sponge.
The magic sponge.
So this is a dumpster fire, folks.
This is this is a complete dumpster fire. So we have a truck purchased about $200,000, probably, those
There were
big trucks.
two pieces of equipment, and I think the total was $430,000. I think the town had $400,000 already put away, and the balance was supposed to be taken from ARPA funds.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, those ARPA funds!
So the one thing I know about ARPA funds, there are a lot of rules with ARPA funds.
Lots
rules.
of strings.
Come on, rules.
And so that you're only allowed to use ARPA funds, for certain projects, okay? And I believe buying a truck was not one of those. If I recall correctly,
Yeah.
you were not allowed to buy equipment with it. So how were they able to do that?
Well, they didn't use the ARPA funds. The previous administration, that was their plan for the balance to be from their ARPA funds.
Okay.
But that didn't happen because we bonded the equipment.
Okay.
So the ARPA funds then were going to pay for the $40,000 generator that was added to the highway building.
Okay.
And then at one board meeting, only because Jimmy Act, who at the time was a councilman, questioned on one of the payments a $40,000 payment from the highway department. And what could that be? And so the supervisor explained that was to pay for the generator. And so I said, here we go. The shell game continues. Mm-hmm. The generator was going to be paid for with ARPA funds. Nothing was said to the public to change that. Only now the ARPA funds had to go to purchase this building on Route 55 that we had to purchase because we needed 8 parking spots. That could, originally they said 20 parking spots.
You would not get 20 parking spots there.
Right. And you know what? We have 8 parking spots already that the First National Bank of Jeffersonville employees use, and we still have spots when they're parked there. So nobody felt that it had to be used for a parking lot. And so I looked up the property management company that bought that building in July of 24 for $27,500. Our town, in a year later, paid $78,000. So the abandoned building increased 200% in like 7 months. And the property management company that owned it has their main office at 45 Rockefeller Plaza in the city, and their second office is listed as that building. Only there hasn't been a life form in that building in I can't tell you how many years. So that was my point at another town board meeting. If you don't know these people, if you have no connection to these people, wouldn't that be a red flag that they have that listed as their second office and yet no one's in the building?
Correct.
Wow.
Thank you for your comment.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm telling you, I brought every public comment for the last year and a half because that's all I can do. The first, with the bonding issue, when I asked a question, when they had the public hearing for that was the response. I said, it wasn't a comment, it was a question. Thank you for your comment. So that's how I learned, they're never going to address any question I have. So let me just, every month, come with what I'm questioning and state what I'm seeing as the obvious.
Correct.
And put it out for the public.
Okay.
But you know how many people go to board meetings? There's not a lot.
And so at these board meetings, you just get up there, you lay out, your questions, and then no one says a word to you. So then why did the sheriff feel the need to put a deputy at these meetings?
I don't know. I'm sure he was called in by the supervisor. There's a lot of dramatic appearance. At that one, I must have mentioned the supervisor's unpaid sales tax debt, which is really a bee in my bonnet because most regular people would be in jail if they had over $170,000.
Whoa. Let's back up here, okay?
Sales tax.
How long
Now
is this?
you
How
got
long is
Rob's
this
attention.
podcast?
Yeah.
You get Rob's attention when you talk about sales tax.
So I just want to understand this.
Well, the supervisors have been looking for part of the sales tax, so he just took his.
He just took his cut
That's
up
right.
early. So this is the town, or the town doesn't pay tax. So him personally.
His businesses. So
His
it's the
businesses.
Oasis and the Stick It In, and they have a Stick It In 2 in Manhattan.
Okay.
Each business has a number of tax warrants outstanding against it, unpaid sales tax, which to me is stealing. Because you don't have to come up with that money. Someone gave you that money.
Correct.
And then you did not forward it to the agency you were supposed to forward
Let me
it
tell you
to.
something.
And let me tell you, they have no tolerance for that generally.
They obviously do, because this is over years. This is, again, the conspiracy theorist thought, because how does that happen? And that's why I mentioned the New York State Department of Taxation. So if anyone ever Googles them, some of this might come up. Again, the State Liquor Authority, because their business, their liquor license was questionable with what they were selling and what they were licensed to sell. And the State Liquor Authority said, they're on our list. They're on your list. Are they 5 on your list or 105? We don't divulge, how we're going to. Oh, great. That's great for you.
But they had a cidery license.
Right.
So in my opponent's video, one of the places he takes a video is in the Oasis, and they're selling hard liquor.
Correct.
Okay, but that's not on a cidery list.
Correct.
Okay, so how are they selling hard liquor?
You'd have to check with the State Liquor Authority.
Okay.
They're on the list. The Department of Health. I put a question into the Department of Health with so many phone calls back and forth to the Department of Health because their well, it was a gas station. The building was a gas station forever. The well is right next to the septic because the well only was necessary for the mechanics to wash their hands. They weren't serving food. They weren't
Correct.
making ice. And so when I questioned the Board of Health about having a certificate, the runaround there, the voicemail, the head woman, I finally spoke to her once and she said, we're doing a concerted effort with a number of state agencies to go in at the same time. Great. That never happened. I finally called back one day and the poor clerk that answered, I said, I don't want any information except, can you tell me, do they have a permit from the Board of Health? And the poor girl just said, I'm just a clerk here. I said, okay, let me foil this. I did a FOIL to the Department of Health for New York State in August. In August, they told me I would...
August of 2024.
2024.
Okay.
I would hear by December 12th. December 12th, they told me I would hear by March. And by March, they told me I would hear by August.
So that's the 5-day rule. So it's supposed to be 5 days unless there's good cause shown.
Correct.
And now they don't run the business because they're leasing it out to the building, nothing's changed in the building, but they're leasing it out to someone else. So this, I really can understand where people would just go like, I can't do this anymore.
So this is why you're running, because you don't like the way your town's being run.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's why. See, the one thing I learned about being in politics. Now, my father-in-law was in the office for 30 years. My wife was on the school board. My brother-in-law is in office. The one thing I learned about people in office, especially in small towns, is generally people are there for 2 reasons. One, because they don't like the way things are being run now, and they think that they can do a better job. And that sounds like you. And the other reason is people want power. Okay, and it's most of it's perceived
Most of it's power.
Yeah, it's power. I mean, that's what they want. They don't do it for the salaries. Trust me when I tell you, folks, it's not for the salaries.
Well, it's not for the salaries that you get from the municipality, but every once in a while there's a couple of sandwiches and a warm-up suit or something else that's there for...
Or an erasure of all your building violations.
Yeah. You're funny you say that because, when Greg Goldstein was brought in to run the Republican Party and come after me, and he said this on a WJFF
Well, he was
interview.
brought in to run you out.
Correct. And
he said that.
And he said that. That's
Jeff,
a fact.
Greg can come on. He knows where the studio is. He was here last
Correct.
week.
He was here last night. I saw him last week. Yeah,
he can come on and he can debate that, but he did say it.
And the reason why was because I wouldn't cooperate.
Right.
And you are correct. I will not cooperate with that type of activity. You are correct.
Right.
And that's why Sue Hoffman, I believe, is under the gun, because she is the last surviving person of an administration that won't go, yes, Mr. Pizzolatto.
Wow.
So she's got to go.
She's been targeted, and she's been targeted from day one. So let's, there's a lot of emotion that's built up in this, because this is our homes, and in the town of Highland, all kidding aside, it's a beautiful place.
It's a lovely place.
The first time I drove in there, I said, well, this is America. I mean, this is Americana right here. It's gorgeous.
I mean, you have your own school.
Yeah.
You have a supermarket.
Yep.
You have good restaurants.
Yep. Churches,
you
good
have
restaurants.
Good places of worship. You have the Delaware River's right down there. I mean, there's a sense of community there. They have their own ambulance who just won ambulance EMS of the Year award. I mean, so there's a lot of attributes to the township.
No question.
And you can see why people would want to live there. But when you have so I just want to be clear. We have a supervisor running the town in some questionable stuff. Some stuff is clearly he broke the law, and especially in the bond issue. Who has tax warrants against him personally, and by the way, John, you're more than welcome to come on. Mike and I would love to discuss your tax warrants and some of your other actions.
Well, actually, because his husband did say to me at one meeting, that's no one's business. And I said, actually, that's incorrect. First of all, it's public information.
Correct.
And secondly, in corporate America, if you have that kind of debt, they don't allow you to be able to access company funds because the risk is too great.
Correct.
So why would we want that person to be in charge of the town purse?
Well, even closer to home, you're talking about a supervisor who ultimately has executive authority over the executive branch of government, which includes the building department.
Correct.
So when you have, and to a lesser extent, you're certainly voting on a tax warrant, and so you've got some authority there. So when you're not paying your taxes and you're not doing what you should be doing in terms of the code, the position is that elected officials need to be better than everybody else because they're the ones that are sitting in judgment of other people. So how do you have your subordinates going out and questioning other people's homes, buildings, projects, when you yourself are living in a dumpster fire?
Correct.
I mean, it's terrible.
And that's been a comment from local businesses. The local businesses who struggle to follow the rules and get their liquor licenses and do everything by the book, see this happening, and you go like, how do you encourage people to continue to follow the law if there's no downside to not following
Well,
it?
how do you hold people accountable who don't follow the law when you don't? How do you have a person that owns a piece of property on Proctor Road? How do you have them stand in front of a judge and get fined for a code violation when brought by the building department, when that's the same person responsible for the same law enforcement function is wiping out years of violations on your own property? I mean, how do you do that? I mean, that can't be. That can't be. And yet, here we are.
Because there's no justice in the justice court, Mike.
Well, it's apparently no justice anywhere in Highland. And Rob, you and I used to actually keep a list, right at my cubicle anyway, on the dais, the rules for radicals.
I used to keep it.
Rob had it, I had it, and we would just click them off. Oh, okay, we got to. Do we have any other Rule 6 public comments here? Because we want to try to keep these in order. We have any Rule 6s? Okay, so we'll go on to Rule 7s. Any Rule 7s? So what we have here is...
Oh, by the way, they never disappointed, by the way.
Oh, they never disappointed. So Mel pointed it out that the MO is to disparage and discredit your opponent. That is one of the rules for radicals.
Correct.
Saul Alinsky's book says that's the way we get rid of our opponents.
Multiple times I have said in an open board meeting that the supervisor needs to stop posting on his political Facebook page and then removing statements.
So he's taking posts and putting them on his town site?
This was a question at a town board meeting because the supervisor posted on his political Facebook page that Sue Hoffman was under criminal investigation. And so...
Well, we know that's not true.
Yes, we do. But presentation is everything. Then he removed that. So at a town board meeting, I said, can you confirm or deny that the town clerk is under criminal investigation? Guess what the response was?
Thank you for your comment.
Okay. I said to the town attorney, can you confirm or deny that Sue Hoffman is under criminal investigation? And he pointed to the supervisor. And I said, can I call the district attorney's office? Yes, you can. 6 phone calls into the district attorney's office. One ADA said, we can't give you that. I said, I just want to know if there's a criminal investigation. I don't want to know any details about the investigation. We can't give you that information because it could impact the investigation. I said, first of all, I know the answer to the question. And secondly, you can't impact the investigation if there is none. And so he forwarded me to Brian Conity, who was kind enough to respond and said, the district attorney's office has no criminal investigation on Sue Hoffman. I said, so she's not under criminal investigation? No, she might be under investigation by the state police. Now I call the state police. And the poor officer who answered the phone, I said, I want no information. I just would like to know if the state police are criminally investigating Sue Hoffman. We can't give you that information, same line. And so he said, you should check with the town. The town clerk, I said, correct me if I'm wrong, but I have a feeling that if I say to people, the town clerk has said she is not under criminal investigation, it's not going to hold a lot of water. Oh, I see your point. But
the good news is that OJ is still looking for the killers.
He is out there every day, and now he's getting a higher authority.
Now he has a higher authority.
So there's not a lot of absolutes in this world, but here's one absolute. If an elected official in this county or any county was truly under criminal investigation, the district attorney would know about it.
Correct.
There is zero chance that the state police are investigating an elected official in this county and they have not at least briefed the district attorney on that.
There's no way that would happen.
It just absolutely. I've been in the district attorney's office. I have been involved in investigations into elected officials. I've been involved in investigations into candidates, and they were held off to not affect the outcome of the election. And there is zero chance.
Which begs the question, isn't the timing of this interesting?
Well, this is a campaign. We've seen that. Rob and I lived it.
Oh, I lived it.
We lived it.
I had people, the police chief of this village, stand up there and talk about how I was killing people in the village of Liberty because we were not taking care of the opioid problem. 2 months out of office, he received an award, right, for how much it has come down, how well the programs that we had put in, my legislature had put in place were working. In fact, there's a guy running for sheriff today who stood up there in public comment and talked about how the opioid crisis was out of control after Albie Bachman, the coroner, had said how the deaths are coming down dramatically. And I'm like, did he just listen to that guy? But that's what they do, folks.
Correct.
I mean, they sit there and tell you, the most outrageous lies.
This was one thing. Someone brought up BJ Gettle at another meeting for some reason. Oh, someone was suggesting that we go back to her to come as code enforcement because the code enforcement now is 3 different people. They cycle through. it's not a good thing. And so the supervisor announced that B.J. Gettle was under investigation. And so I contacted B.J. Gettle.
She is not.
And she said,
is not.
if I were under investigation, the state would have notified me. So at the next meeting, I said, once again, I would like to caution the town supervisor against saying false, defamatory things at a public meeting, because that could bring the town under a justifiable litigation. There's so many litigations against the town, and you can't blame people.
So what you've got is unscrupulous people who are floating out the inference that there is this big investigation. It shows up on the front page of the Democrat. And
by the way, $4.5 million on the Town of Highland.
Yeah, wouldn't the county have a little inkling about that?
That is 2 years of their budget.
Right.
Okay? They would have had no money for 2 years. It's impossible.
Well, and Bonadio, who, by the way, if there is a criminal investigation, you might as well wipe that out, because the chain of custody of the computer has been blown up because Bonadio had it for about a month.
Okay, so as you know, we use Bonadio.
We did at the county quite a bit.
And I found that they give the results that you're looking for.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. I mean, they know who's paying their bill. Okay.
Right.
But also interesting, because our accountant was doing a procedural review for the town that the previous administration had requested. It was completed 2 years later. The announcement at the town board meeting by the supervisor was there were just a few incidental things, and we have a clean bill of health. So the town taxpayers paid $11,000 for that report. I then foiled that report, because one man's just a few incidental things could be another person's, this is a big deal.
Sure.
The newly hired FOIL clerk, who was illegally employed, responded that it's his understanding that the report was verbal. Okay, we got that? $11,000 the taxpayers paid for a phone call.
So they do a 2-year report, is this?
2-year report. Wrap that right up with a phone call.
And so at the end of that, you guys are all good. I mean, is that the conversation?
I don't know what the conversation was.
So I spent more than 10 years on the school board, and I spent 4 years as the county attorney, which means I've listened to at least 15 annual reviews. Mm-hmm. Trust me when I tell you, they are not wrapped up with a phone call, and they are usually a fairly thick document, and those auditors go through every nickel and every dime. But the report from Bonadio, and my experience has been the same thing, they will find what you want them to find.
Correct.
Well, what they found was there was more money deposited than was taken in.
Right.
So Sue's a philanthropist is what we've got here.
Well, I want to know how we can get her in our town if that's the case.
But also, if the record keeping was that, $4.5 million is a lot of money. So the county would be aware that those taxes weren't recorded, and the people who paid those taxes would ultimately, they'd go after them for not paying their taxes.
Well, there's a little office up in Albany called the Office of the Comptroller, and if you had 200% of your annual budget just either missing or just sitting in fund balance, they'd have something to say about that.
So here's my question to you. So you go to these town board meetings. You said your daughter's on the town board.
Well, she is on the town board. She didn't just say it. I mean, she's being honest.
Okay. So we know that Mel Karney is...
Well, because sometimes the Board of Elections can't confirm who's been elected or not. But she has been elected.
So, with that said, why are we paying Bonadio or any outside agency when there are many agencies inside the state that will do this for free? You have NISEC. You have the comptroller's office. You have. We had a problem in the town of Bethel. The county treasurer came in, did an audit, collected the taxes for that year in the town of Bethel.
Angela Chevalier's group could go in there.
I mean, you can have the counties, and let me tell you, you want to find something, you get Angela Chevalier's group in there, and I'm telling you right now, you will know, and I'm not, Mike, back me up on this, to the penny
Absolutely.
what is in there.
In fact, they'll fret if they're 4 cents off on $4 million. They will work day and night and find the 4 cents.
But
They're kicking
also,
it back.
if you're going from the procedural report that we were told there were only a few things off, that was how many months before this suddenly all this egregious behavior occurred.
Well,
And the town clerk, though, that gets solved with an annual audit.
So
Correct.
And where's the annual audit?
Where is the annual
I mean,
audit?
Mr. Pizzolatto's been in office a number of years. If there's
And-
all this corruption, you would think day one, first thing you do is you bring in Cooper Arias or somebody to do an audit.
Correct.
And why wasn't, because Cooper Arias did the procedural report, why didn't the town attorney read that at an open meeting? Why is it just this report from Bonadillo that's read? And it's not even completed. This is just
Initial findings.
initial findings read aloud at a town board meeting.
Which is so inappropriate.
So inappropriate.
So let me tell you something on these reports, because we had Angela Chevalier's group, who is the county auditor, and we had the SCVA audited.
And
right?
the reason, and let's see, because your political opponents and your detractors will say that you did that to attack them, to weaponize your office against them. You did that your very first year in office just to get a baseline of where they were at.
Correct.
That's all.
So the year I ran for office, the SCVA took in their budget was
They
given
took in nothing.
$900,000. When I left office, they were given $2.3 million.
And there was about a handful of expenditures that Angela believed were inappropriate.
Correct.
But that wasn't on the front page of the Democrat.
No.
You used that internally.
We used it
to work
internally
with.
to work with them to tighten up their procedures.
And they did.
Okay, and they did. Okay, and let me tell you something. So we grew that agency because you have to have a baseline, folks.
Right.
And we took it from a 900. I believe their budget this year is $3.1 million.
Right.
Okay. And a lot of the new money came in, just so we're clear, through the county attorney's office. I had asked the county attorney, who was Mike McGuire at the time, to go after
I have no recollection of that.
Yeah. Anybody who owed us
Bed tax
and was not paying them. So we called, Mike's office called up Expedient, who controls the number 2 and the number 3 largest
VRBO.
Yeah, VRBO and Home and Away.
And Home and Away.
And they said, no, we don't pay that. And we said, oh, no, you're going to pay that. And Mike proceeded to explain to them why they were going to pay that. And magically, our monies for bed tax shot through the roof.
Through the roof.
Right? And I was still the bad guy, though. Don't get me wrong, because it's all about character assassination. It's not
That's all
about,
it's about.
It's not about deeds, folks. Jacob's doing hand signals to you. 5 minutes? So
Says we got 3 hours to go.
3 hours to go, folks.
Jacob, they didn't tell you this is a radiothon.
Yeah, I felt like I was at a radio. So
I may not look like Jerry Lewis, but we're going.
So, not Jerry Lewis now.
Well, no, I hope I look better than him now.
So the point being is that you have these reports and you use them internally. Okay, you don't use them to start bashing people. I never brought them out publicly. I never went after anyone publicly with it. It was private conversations. This is what we found. This is what we want cleaned up, and we will get you more money. And we did just that.
And if they did that and they found issues in the clerk's office, no one takes nobody has any problem with that. Nobody says anything about it.
See, the funny thing about elected positions, no one tells you how to do your job.
Well, no, you get elected on day one.
Correct.
Except a judge, because you're responsible to be in court. Mm-hmm. Any other elected official can swear in on January 1st and check out 2 or 4 years later, never show up in the office, and there's nothing you can do unless if it's a county-wide office, you've got to go to the Attorney General's office, and the governor is the one that can remove a county-wide, and locally you go to a Supreme Court judge. They've not done either of that because they have nothing to go with. This is a complete fishing expedition, and this has to petrify everybody regardless of your political affiliation.
Well,
because
another
they will go
concern-
after their enemies.
Another concern is putting the constabulary on the ballot for November because he has now weaponized the code enforcement office.
Mm-hmm.
He's trying to weaponize the town clerk's office. And can we imagine what would happen if he had his own police department? It's
His own
frightening.
police force.
It's frightening.
It's frightening.
So,
And the information he put out to encourage people to put that back on was incorrect. And again, the front page above the fold on the Democrat, I sent a letter to the editor immediately because I said, he told you the town paid $200,000 to the sheriff's department. At the first budget meeting, we paid the sheriff's department $37,000.
Right.
That's a huge disconnect.
So
but now you're printing your correction on page 2 the following week that no one's going to see.
I negotiated that
contract.
Okay,
100%.
and it was a savings to the town of Highland.
In so many ways.
Well, you have no workers' comp. You don't have to maintain vehicles. And you've got a
Correct.
professional law enforcement agency that's got a person. And the reason, to be clear, the reason that the town of Highland had to pay is they wanted an officer committed to the town of Highland, not just rolling through that sector,
Correct.
which would be Tustin to Lumberland. And they have that.
Correct.
And so they now have an arm.
Oh, and by the way, they worked the exact same hours.
Correct.
That the constables were scheduled for.
with no
beforehand.
liability to
With
the town.
zero liability.
No liability and much better training, much better backup and support.
And they can make arrests.
Correct.
And they can make it. That's a nice thing about in terms of keeping the streets safe.
So one of the problems in Highland is it's a huge pass-through town.
Right.
From people coming from the eastern part of the county going to Pennsylvania with drugs. It's a huge pass-through town. 55 is a big corridor for that.
Did an arraignment yesterday, actually. A guy came across the bridge from Shahola and got picked up.
Yeah,
by a
so
sheriff's deputy.
so what happens? I mean, there's it happens all the time, and that's why it's important to have a dedicated officer to the town.
And the constables have a role, but there's a huge expense. Mel pointed out with the truck. We all know if you take a loan on your car, you got to have collision because that's got to be security. You know what collision insurance is like on a $150,000 truck? It becomes more than the value of the truck.
Correct.
And so the
Don't
town,
I know that?
Yeah, right. The town now has safer streets, better response, and the Lumberland constables will cross over into Highland if they still have that agreement. We have the agreement in Lumberland that Highland constables could come in when they had it, and they help each other out. And you get the state police right up Route 97.
Correct.
So it's
So in the last 2 minutes that we have here, Mel, is there anything that you want to say to the people of the town of Highland?
I really encourage people who are Facebook devotees to understand, as much as I am a champion of free speech, with that goes responsibility, because free speech does not necessarily mean factual speech. And because I have no social media presence, I just get the most horrific things sent to me privately. There are things that are being said that just aren't true, and I choose not to address them individually, but I will be speaking through Highland Happenings at some point in the near future to just kind of introduce myself to people who are on social media. I understand it's a great way to reach out to people, but I cannot get involved with the back and forth of he said, she said, and everyone's lying. It's just a waste of everyone's time, I believe.
And why should people vote for you for town supervisor?
Because I obey the law.
I mean, it seems that is a trait that's well needed in the town of Highland right now.
And I'm really concerned with our finances. I think what we see as part of the budget process, the supervisor did not put away the $100,000 that previous administrations did. He put away $40,000. And then at the end of the budget hearings, when the public was allowed to speak, I said, you have not made an appropriation for the bond payment, which was required by the bond. It's also...
And he was told that.
He was told that.
And that's the improper bond.
Before the budget was passed. Then he explained the $40,000 that he had dedicated for equipment was going to go to pay the bond payment. A, it's only half the payment. And B, you go like, that's not what you said a minute and a half ago. So the finances that we know are kind of disastrous. I can only imagine what we don't know.
But if we can keep bad-mouthing the town clerk, we can just put it all on her lap at the end of the day.
You make it all her fault.
Yeah,
make it all her fault. Well, folks, we just wanted to open your eyes to what is happening in one of our towns. It may be happening other places. And there's a pattern here because we talked about with the legislature, Rob and I went through a few episodes back about this is what they say when they're running and this is what they do when they're governing. Correct. And now we've got campaigns have taken on, it used to be pancake breakfasts and ribbon cutting ceremonies, and now it's legal process, take them out, badmouth them, spread rumors about them, use the media, weaponize the offices against them, and then expect these people in a small town to be able to have a fair election. Doesn't matter who you're voting for, but understand that some people so desperately thirst for power that they will do anything to anyone who stands in their way. So we will not let this go. We will continue to drill down on it. Next week on Eye on Sullivan, we're going to bring back the officers.
Dave Corman,
who was here a few episodes back. They're going to give us an update because the prison situation is off the front pages and out of the news, but it's far from over.
They fired 2,000 officers.
Right.
They are, the expense of this is going to affect the New York State taxpayer. They're putting up National Guard in local hotels. They are buying every meal outside of the prisons. I mean, the cost is escalating, and it's all because Kathy Hochul, our governor, refuses to make the job safe.
Well, and the other thing that's going to happen is to deal with the self-inflicted problems with staffing, because new people don't want any part of it, is we're going to start to see the revolving door open up, and criminals are going to be cut loose early.
Correct.
Because they've got to keep the populations down. The individual that wants to do for the city of New York what he did for the state of New York is the person that, when he closed the mental health hospitals, then decreed that we've solved the mental health problem in New York State because the population in our facilities is reduced by 95%. By closing 96% of the beds.
So this was the same guy who insisted that the older folks be put into nursing homes during COVID.
No, that's where the sick people go.
Same
that's
guy.
Sick people.
Same
so
guy.
We could go on and on.
On and on.
Once again, the hour and 5 minutes or so passes quickly. So, folks, if you enjoy the content, if you enjoy the topics that we're covering, leave us a comment. You're watching us on YouTube. You want to take time right now, before you go get another cold drink out of the refrigerator, because you need to
smash
that like button. We want you to subscribe. We are over 200 subscribers. We need to get that up to about 1,000. Then we can live stream. We can take your comments on the air. For now, leave us a comment. Let us know what you think of the show. And again, John Pizzolatto, you want to come on? We will keep the chair warm for you. You're welcome to come on and tell us why you think, as one elected official, that you have the authority to emasculate another elected official. And you can always drop us a line at the email at ionsullivan@gmail.com. And this is the last time I'm going to spell it for you. It's EYEonsullivan@gmail.com. So on behalf of the chairman, Rob Doherty, and our special guest today, Mel Karney, we wish Mel all the best on the campaign trail. You are truly fighting evil in the town of Highland. And we need to clean that up, because it's a beautiful town, and there's so many wonderful people that live down in that town. So let's get it back to a slice of Americana and less of a slice of the Gulag Archipelago.
From your lips to God's ears.
So, again, we'll be back next week with another edition of Eye on Sullivan. Jacob's got to run. Thanks, folks.